evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Demons changed appearance to look like the women's husbands. They filled the women with that spirit of darkness and wickedness and brought into being gold and silver, money and coins, iron and other metals, and all things of this sort. And the people who were attracted were led astray into troubles and were greatly lost my place. Oh, sorry, here we go. And the people who were attracted were led astray into troubles and were greatly misled and grew old, experiencing no pleasure and being led astray. And that's how it's been since the beginning. All right, welcome, friends. Sorry about that. Skipped out on the page there. But anyways, I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And we are following up. I think this is the 20th installment of our chapter by chapter, verse by verse introspection of the Book of Enoch. And I'm joined by Rob Skiba. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am here, Zen. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you this week?
What a crazy week this has been, man. I gotta say, I'm almost to the point of losing complete faith in humanity. The way things have been going lately.
Well, it's hard to have confidence in stupidity, and humanity seems to be embracing that as conditions. So
yeah, it's getting kind of frightening, actually, when you think about it. But I don't know. I know with whom I put my trust, so I'm just gonna Father,
absolutely,
please, help, because
right,
this place is being overrun by lunatics.
It really is. It really is. The whole one flew over the cuckoo's nest seems to be where we are in these days.
Well, we've talked a few times about gardening and how I'm trying to figure that deal out. And I mean it's definitely not the point and click world that I'm used to. Plug and play is not gardening. That's for sure. There's a huge learning curve. There's a fantastic amount of resources out there for free. You just got to really take the time to seek it out and look at it and then go out and do it. But meanwhile, I'm seeing more and more news reports of millions of animals being euthanized and huge mountains of good, otherwise edible produce being discarded, just left to rot and thrown away. All because, this whole COVID-19 thing, on the one hand, I am against the meat market system that we have. Just the horrors that these animals have to endure. I mean, it's just, I'm totally against that. So on the one hand, I'm happy that the meat markets have been shut down. But euthanizing these, maybe it's a good thing for these animals, frankly. Maybe it's an act of mercy to euthanize them instead of putting them through that horror. But, and I'm against GMO food and all, plants and stuff like that. But the fact remains, people were still eating that meat and they were still eating that produce. And, just because we don't have staff to man the various facilities that are the intermediate between the farmer and the end user, that doesn't mean we just get rid of the food. It's like, I just posted an article today. There's somebody named Molly Page that I think it was in Boise, Idaho or someplace like that. She saw that there were just mountains, huge mountains of potatoes that were just left to rot. They're like, oh, well, I guess we can't do anything with it. So, she's like, no, people have pickup trucks,
Right.
So she organized some community meetings and stuff, got people together to do Operation Rescue Potato, potato rescue or whatever, and get that out to people. I mean, it's like,
good for them.
Okay, farmers, I can appreciate your position on one hand, and the financial stresses that you're under, just like everybody else. But, if the issue is you're not making any money because you can't sell it to the various distributors or what have you, so you're just going to throw it away? Like,
Right.
If the net result for you is no money anyway, why starve everybody?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, look, if it's going to be thrown away, you can give it away. And I'm like, why do I actually have to explain this to anybody?
No doubt.
You know what I mean? It's like, man, I mean, it's just like a forced starvation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see, oh yeah, Bill Gates is working on, creating artificial meat. Well, yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh.
Guy's a Luciferian psychopath who cares nothing about health and everything about wealth. He's thinking, oh yeah, forced pandemic, cool. Everybody needs a vaccine. Imagine getting $1 from 7 billion plus people.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, there's no food. Hey, here's my fake meat.
Yeah.
Like,
try the Soylent Green.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing, right? It's people. I mean, we can laugh about it, but the reality of it is becoming shockingly apparent.
True.
We may be headed in that actual direction. And,
yeah, that's so sad.
but then on the other side of it, oh man, it's like no good deed goes unpunished, man.
Mm.
Last night I thought, okay, I've come against Q and various things about Trump, an unfair number of shows that both I've hosted as well as shows that I've been on talking about it. And I've got friends that are like hardcore Trump and Q fans. So, and one of them, he's a dear brother. I met him at a conference, the Isaiah 46:10 conference a few years back. And he and his son have prayed for Sheila and I and for our son and, our ministry. And they've been regular, faithful financial supporters of what we're doing. So, he's somebody that has taken the time to invest in us, not just financially, but, emotionally, spiritually. And, so he's a brother that I love the guy. And, he's a hardcore Trump Q guy. So anytime I post something anti-Trump or Q, he's there, boom, so I'm like, all right, dude, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a platform, 2 hours on my show, convince me,
Mm-hmm.
And even that, man, like, you read the comments in that video, and like, now granted, I don't think you did a very good job of convincing, but still, it's like, look, I'm trying to be objective here and look at both sides of the argument, give a fair, platform for both. And just, man, and last week, oh man, I wore a mask, so now I'm part of the cabal. It's like, look, I have like allergies, and my wife's just trying to help people.
Right.
And
Right.
because like you can't even go to like some CVS's, for example, won't even let you walk in the door unless you're wearing a mask. So okay, you can protest. I get that. I understand that. But like, if you need something, you all you're going to do is protest and walk away not having whatever it was you needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you could say, okay, fine, I'll wear a mask so I can go in there and get what I need. I mean, I understand the whole idea of capitulating to the man. I get that. Me personally, look, I've had allergies. You can listen to shows that I've done this time of the year, throughout the last 10 years. You can hear me sniffling, sneezing, coughing, going, oh my God, So, yeah, I need a mask for allergies. But people, go read the comments from last week's show. It's like, of course, I should learn, if the key to internet sanity is don't read the comments, right?
Right.
Stupid monkey. I'm still not. I'm still not getting it.
Right.
Anyway, man, it's just like, and meanwhile, you got a huge number of people on the let's throw Paul out of the Bible train right now.
Yeah. Somebody asked me to comment on that and do a show about that as well. And some huge ministry came out with something about that.
Yeah, it was Justin Best of Christian Truthers, who's a friend of mine.
Yeah, right.
I love both those guys, Justin Best from Christian Truthers and Adam Fink from Parable of the Vineyard. First of all, both of these guys still name Yeshua as their Messiah. So, and as long as they're on that path, I'm like, okay, fine, you're a brother. You know, beyond that, these are both military guys, so we're like brothers in arms in that regard.
Yeah.
And they're just good guys. So I like these guys. But we had a real good heart-to-heart private three-way phone with like a Skype call the other day, just kind of talking through some things, and I'm like, look, man, I love you. I support your quest for truth. I mean, we got a show called Quest for Truth, for crying out loud, right? We should be able to ask questions and seek out the answers. That said, if you've already come to your conclusion and I happen to disagree with it, I'm going to oppose it.
Right.
So no offense, I love you, brother, but every time you put something out that, because you're talking about throwing out 2/3 of the New Testament and calling into question what's left, because it's like, well, Luke wrote all about this, the Book of Acts. So you got to question Luke's credibility. And Ananias was called by Yeshua right after he blinded Paul and said, hey, you got to go talk to this dude. He's having a dream right now, or vision or whatever, that somebody named Ananias is going to come see him. So that's you. He's like, yeah, but Lord, like, he's the guy killing everybody. He's like, no, I have chosen him. Yeshua said that to Ananias. I have chosen him.
Yes.
So they're saying he's a self-proclaimed apostle. But no, and now, see, this is what I mean. You got to throw out Luke's testimony of Ananias, who had a appearance, a vision, whatever, a word from the Lord saying, hey, I called him, go heal him and show him what he must suffer for my sake. So then right after that, and it says he laid hands on him and he received his sight and he became filled with the Holy Ghost.
Right.
Now we got a big problem, going back to something you and I have talked about a number of times, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. When somebody is walking in the anointing and the power of the Holy Spirit, doing things,
yes,
and people come alongside and say what they're doing is of the devil, that's blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And it says in Acts chapter 9 that Paul was filled with the Holy Ghost, and the some people say the byproduct of that is tongues. I believe tongues is part of it, but the number one byproduct of being filled with the Holy Ghost is walking out in boldness. You see it over and over again. They're filled with the Spirit. They went out and boldly proclaimed the gospel. And that's immediately what Paul starts doing. And then he's heading down from Damascus down to Jerusalem, and somewhere along the line, Barnabas is watching what this guy's doing. And so when the other apostles got wind that Paul's coming down their way, and they knew what he was about, after killing Stephen and what have you, they were afraid of him. But Barnabas vouches for him. So now you got to call into question the credibility of Luke, Ananias, and Barnabas. And then later you see that James, Peter, then the council and everybody's accepting him. So now you got to throw Peter out. You got to throw. It's like ultimately, when you go down this path, I've seen it happen so many times. Eventually, you throw out the New Testament, and with it, Yeshua.
Right.
So of course, I'm going to take a stand against that.
Yeah, absolutely. I am as well, and I told people about there's the Epistle of the Apostles, which if you read that, and it's one that many people are not familiar with, but it's one of the anti-Nicene, the council, the church fathers, and their deliberations, and one of those epistles, and it specifically makes mention, Christ, at the time that he's meeting the apostles after his resurrection, he's telling them, I'm going to send you Paul, and I want you to heal him, and he's going to be my anointed for the Gentiles, and he's telling this to the apostles sometime after the resurrection. And so it's clear to me that he's part of the work. And then especially when you read, because we put together the Great Commission series as well, and books 1 and 2 are on the Acts and the Gospels, of the apostles and the work that they've done. And it's elaborated because it also has many of these texts where the apostles go forth 2 by 2 to the different parts of the work and doing the Great Commission, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and taking the gospel to all the ends of the earth. And in that work, Paul is instrumental in working with all of the various apostles as they cross paths and are assisting and aiding one another. And then, there's so many other texts like Paul and Thecla and, all these other manuscripts, which in my mind make it clear that he was, without a doubt, he put his life at risk to do the work of the Great Commission and was anointed as part of the group of the apostles and in doing that work. And so, again, I invite people to examine this material because it becomes clear. It's undeniable. And then other books like, we see in 2 Corinthians that Paul speaks about being taken to the third heaven and seeing paradise. And there's another text, well, two actually, the vision of Paul and then the apocalypse of Paul. And both of those give great detail of, his being taken up there to the third heaven and paradise and being witness to the other apostles that were already resurrected during the time that Christ had when he died on the cross and descended down into Sheol. He's taken up there and then sees the saints, and they know who he is and they welcome him, and he sees what happens to a righteous and a wicked soul after their death, and so these kind of things affirm to me without a doubt that he is part of the elect and did the work of the apostles. And so I'm good with it in the study of what I've learned with regard to Paul.
Yeah, I think it's important to certainly to bring these things out. And what frustrates me is, first of all, those guys put out like really awesome videos. And I told them, I said, when I was in the corporate world doing professional video and in the ministry doing the same thing, the quality of videos that they're putting out is what I'm used to putting out. Yeah. The stuff that I've been putting out on YouTube is like way below that. It's like, look, just get it out because I don't have any time.
Right.
And, I mean, the kind of videos they're putting out, you got to script it all out, you got to record it, then you got to go find, you got to spend a ridiculous amount of time just combing through stock footage to, find the clips that go along with what you're saying, and put it all together in nice. So it's like, I have tremendous respect for people who take the time to make such good videos. But the problem with that is because the production of it is so good, it is so tempting to easily get drawn into whatever the message is because of the production of it. And, frankly, a lot of the arguments, I would say easily 80 to maybe even 90% of the arguments are so lame, like just so, really we're having this discussion? Like, what? It's almost, I kept feeling like it was like the, 10 reasons why we know the Earth's a globe, and like 8 of the 10 you can totally squash like a pancake, in seconds without even thinking about it, That's sort of the way I felt about the various arguments of the coming against Paul. But there's still, let's say it's 90% like that. You still have the 10% that are, you got to dig in. It's like, okay, what's going on? And one of them that I here, let me just say this. I enjoy when there are disagreements like this because it forces me, as it does others, to dig deeper to defend whatever it is you think you believe.
Yes, exactly.
And so, ultimately, there's a lot of benefit to this, as difficult and sometimes painful as it can be. Like my whole Archon Invasion, my second book, that came out of primarily Facebook debates between me and Dante Fortson for like a year. And going back and forth, and it's like, okay, he's got a point here, but is that valid? Well, let's see. And then I go and dig and dig and dig, and next thing I got a book.
Right.
I've practically got a book on Paul right now. This last week of Facebook notes and comments, but one of them is where Yeshua confronts Paul on the road to Damascus, and he says, why are you persecuting me? He says, it's hard for you to kick against the pricks or the goats. And I, honestly, I never knew what that meant. I was like, that's just kind of bizarre. But one of the anti-Paulian arguments is that, well, that's a quote from a poem to Dionysus. So from like 400 BC. So this is part of Paul's testimony, a phrase directly lifted from a poem to Dionysus. And by the way, what is Jesus doing saying that? And on the surface, it seems like, well, that's an interesting, legitimate argument, right? So I started digging into it, and come to find out that no, that was actually a very well-known Greek figure of speech that wasn't just in the poem to Dionysus. It's in a lot of Greek manuscripts. It was a common figure of speech that essentially means when you go up against a higher power, you're going to lose. That's and the picture of it is an oxen, doing its thing. They had like this prod with like a prick on the end of it, and when the oxen is not doing his job or whatever the beast of burden is, the person jabs it, and if the animal rebels and tries to kick against the prick, well, all he does is poke a hole through his foot, and now he's in even more pain. So the whole idea is, if you're going to buck against a higher power, kick against the prick, well, you're just going to put a hole in your foot and you could cause yourself more pain. And you would consider everything that Paul was about and what he was doing and what his zeal, where his misplaced zeal was. It was appropriate for Yeshua to say that to Paul because Paul knew the Greek phrase. Like he knew what it meant in an agricultural system, a culture of agriculture. It makes sense that he would use that, not only for it to click in Paul's mind, but Paul being the missionary, if you will, to the Gentiles, everywhere he was going. When he told his testimony, everybody would have made the mental association go, oh, yeah, I get it. But these are the kind of things that I like about this debate is I wouldn't have known that. I would have never had the time to go look that up.
Yeah. So you learned something, right?
So I see value in it, but as I told Justin, I'm like, dude, whether we like to admit it or not, and I don't like to even admit it. I say, don't do this. Most of my conferences start with, don't believe me.
Yes, exactly. Right.
I'm not your teacher. I'm an opinionated student. It happens to have a microphone. But I recognize that people still would view me as a teacher, and I would say that I am doing teaching. So I guess whether I like it or not, I got to wear that hat, right?
Right.
As teachers, we're held to a higher accountability.
Absolutely.
And what I caution him about is the collateral damage is enormous. Like, right now, Adam still believes in, he's more on the fence, I would say, but leaning more towards, our side of it, that Paul's legit. And they're like partners, just like you and I are doing this show together. They have shows that they do together. So Justin has dissed Paul completely, and Adam's like, okay,
Yeah.
He's listening to his friend. He's listening to the art. He's trying to be objective, but he loves Paul, as I do, and thinks he's legit. But they have a huge influence. The subscription base is, it's a respectable, substantial number of people that, historically speaking, easily 9 times out of 10, whether they do or not, easily 9 times out of 10, 9 people out of 10 people are going to dish Yeshua. And like, do you really want to be responsible for that?
Right.
I don't know. It's just, and on one hand, I'm thinking, okay, the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket. We're looking at the likelihood of a nationwide, if not worldwide, famine. And we're thinking about throwing out 2/3 of the New Testament and questioning the rest of it.
Right.
And people are having a conniption because I have allergies. What?
Yeah. How strange the times. Right.
Dude.
Yeah. Especially, we were talking about throwing out the Bible and throwing out food. I mean, these are definitely crazy times. You see all these people in need, but I did find a passage that I want to read from the epistles that I was talking about. And this is verse 31, and people can look this up for themselves. It's the epistles of the apostles. And it says, "And behold, a man shall meet you whose name is Saul, which being interpreted is Paul. He is a Jew, circumcised according to the law. And he shall receive my voice from heaven with fear and terror and trembling. And his eyes shall be blinded, and by your hands, by the signs of the cross, shall they be protected. Do ye unto him all that I have done unto you. Deliver it unto the other. And at the same time that man shall open his eyes and praise the Lord, even my Father which is in heaven. He shall obtain power among the people, and shall preach and instruct, and many that hear him shall obtain glory and be redeemed. But thereafter shall men be wroth with him and deliver him into the hands of his enemies. And he shall bear witness before kings that are mortal, and his end shall he shall turn unto me. Whereas he persecuted me at the first, he shall preach and teach and abide with the elect as a chosen vessel, and a wall that shall not be overthrown. Yea, the last of the last shall become a preacher unto the Gentiles, made perfect by the will of my Father. Like as ye have learned from the Scripture, that your fathers the prophets spake of me, and in me it is indeed fulfilled. There's more, but that'll give you an idea.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together. Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I do want to give you the last two passages of this particular quotation, and what I'm reading is the Epistles of the Apostles. It's chapter or verse 31 and 33 specifically. I will be skipping 32, but just to bring the rest of this. And he said unto us, Be ye also therefore guides unto them, and all things that I said unto you, and that ye write concerning me, tell ye them, that I am the word of the Father, and that the Father is in me. Such also shall ye be unto that man, as becometh you. Instruct him, and bring to his mind that which is spoken of me in the Scriptures, and is fulfilled. And thereafter shall he become the salvation of the Gentiles. And we asked him again, When shall we meet with that man? And when wilt thou depart unto thy Father and our God and Lord? He answered and said unto us, That man will come out of the land of Cilicia unto Damascus of Syria, to root up the church which ye must found there. It is I that speak through you, and he shall come quickly, and he shall become strong in the faith, that the word of the prophet may be fulfilled, which saith, Behold, out of Syria will I begin to call together a new Jerusalem, and Sion will I subdue unto me, and it shall be taken, and the place which is childless shall be called the son and the daughter of my Father, and my bride. For so hath it pleased him that sent me. But that man will I turn back, that he accomplish not his evil desire. And the praise of my Father shall be perfected in him. And after that I am gone home, and abide with my Father. I will speak unto him from heaven, and all things shall be accomplished, which I have told you before concerning him. So, I think it's clear that, Yeshua is an advocate of Paul.
You think? Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
And,
right.
People get upset that we talk about some of these things. This is an Enoch show, but
yeah,
this stuff's important.
It is. I agree.
On another note, I was watching, have you ever heard of Brad Scott?
No.
He's I really like him, first of all. He's a really nice guy, very cool. Enjoy a lot of his teachings. But people like to send me his teaching on the sons of God and the giants and stuff, because he's a Sethite guy. Well, actually, not even. He's not really even a Sethite guy. He's kind of a. He says there's like three positions. There's the angelic view, the Sethite view, and then there's the mighty man view. That there were people who were in positions of power and authority and rulers, that they were the ones that took the daughters of men. And I've met the guy. I met him at United in Torah conference in San Diego. I think it was 2015. We were sitting at a campfire after the conference, just kind of hanging out outside, and I say, nobody prior to 160 AD held the view that you do. And we kind of get into friendly jabbing, but he did a whole series in 2016 that I'm suffering through right now. They're like an hour long, and I just started part 4, so he's taken literally 3 hours to say nothing. Trying to make his case. I'm like, anybody that has to tap dance for 3 hours to make an otherwise simple, very simple point is clearly trying really hard to just ignore the simplicity of the text and the mountain of information that supports the angelic view.
I guess he's totally against the Book of Enoch as well, huh?
Well, you'd have to be. I haven't got to.
course.
Yeah, I haven't got to that part. He's saving it for last, and I'm curious to where he goes with Jude and Peter. Also, citing the things that they do. But it's again, all these things that's going on right in my life right now. These are like, oh man, like I'm going in 50 directions right now.
Right.
Researching stuff, and then I saw a movie a couple of days ago called Silence. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
I'm generally not a Martin Scorsese fan, but it's one of his films. It came out a few years ago. It's about missionaries in Japan and the persecution of Christians in Japan.
Oh wow!
And it's almost a 3-hour long movie. It's a hard movie to watch, and you're tempted as you go through the thing to think that this is just going to be more anti-Christian propaganda. And there are parts where I did think that, but I could spoil anything for anybody that might want to check it out. But the very end of it, it's one of those, and this is how I identify good filmmaking, is when it sticks with you long after you've watched it.
Right.
And you're wrestling through the thoughts and things that the character had to go through, as if like, well, what would I do in that situation? And I say all that to say that, Paul was one of the guys doing that persecution, hardcore.
Yes, right.
And then he something happened that radically turned him around, such that now he was the guy who spent the rest of his life being physically abused until his head finally rolled off the chopping block.
Right.
Like, this guy has taken a greater stand for the kingdom than anybody that I know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Certainly than anybody coming against him right now. I'm like,
right.
Guys, like we have the gift of these texts being left for us. In Enoch, like, okay, Cave 4 had something like 6 copies, I think, of the Book of Enoch, and Cave 4 alone of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's dated to between 400 and 200 BC. Copies. So, like, clearly these were important texts. Like, why do we want to throw these out? To believe things that you have to tap dance for 3 hours to try to justify.
Right, and especially when especially with the Book of Enoch, I mean, it brings clarity and elaborates on Genesis 6 more so than any other text available out there. And in reading it and studying it, things like, the sons of God and also the luminaries and biblical cosmology and the elect one, Christ being the Savior Messiah. I mean, all these things are affirmed without a doubt, and it's an ancient text. So I mean, and it was found, the predominant text found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, and so you can't argue with its veracity. Yeah. And so, but people try to, and then as we've said and mentioned previously, and yes, we will go into the text here in just a minute, everyone, but people only want to accept portions. They want to pick and choose, and it's like with the Bible, are you going to accept the whole of it, or the same thing with those people that are heliocentric and want to ignore the Genesis timeline and the whole thing of the sun and the moon standing still and sun going back 10 degrees on the sundial. I mean, it's not the earth. If it were the earth causing the sun to go down, then it would have been the earth that would have been stopped and reversed and all that. So,
yeah. So, in that regard, did you get through chapter 75 in Charles? The leaders or the heads of the thousands were placed over the whole creation.
Yes. Yes. I explained that when I was talking about the different calendars and the systems and all that.
Okay, so did we get through it fair enough, or do you want to revisit it and pick up from there, or?
We can revisit it.
Because if I remember right, I didn't read the Lawrence version. We just did the. I'm not gonna bother reading it, but it's close enough.
I just did where I broke down and did the explanation from my book, and so that's when I read. Yeah, but yeah, let's do it.
I'm just looking through it to see if anything in here that maybe caught my eye.
All right.
Verse 6, as for the 12 portals in the heaven at the ends of the earth, out of which go forth the sun, moon, and stars, and all the works of the heaven in the east and west, there are many windows open to the left and right of them. And one window at its appointed season produces warmth corresponding as they do to the doors from which the stars come forth, according as he has commanded them, and wherein they set corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course throughout the entire world. What is that? That's like the chariot that is above the others running in the world. Did you cover that at all?
No, I didn't. The last thing I remember that we spoke about, we were talking about the eclipses, and then we ended with we were talking about how in the Book of Enoch it describes the sun and moon being of equal size and dimension. And let me see where that was.
This is what I just read, was the latter part of Charles
74.
75.
75, okay. Yeah, in Enoch 71, verse 47, it says that it shines with the seventh portion of light from the moon, but the dimensions of both are equal. And I remember we had, I mean, we read this long before, but I know that we were talking about the eclipses at the very end, and we had made mention of that. So, all right, let me review this.
So maybe we didn't get this far then?
Yeah, I don't think we did. We didn't talk about this specifically.
All right, I'll tell you what. We'll just go ahead here, and if we did, it's a review, whatever.
Yeah.
So for Lawrence, this is 74 in the Lawrence. So these are the leaders of the chiefs of the thousands, those which preside over all creation and over all the stars, with the 4 days which are added and never separated from the place allotted them, according to the complete computation of the year. And these serve 4 days, which are not computed in the computation of the year. Respecting them, men greatly err. For these luminaries truly serve in the mansion of the world 1 day in the first gate, 1 in the third gate, 1 in the fourth, and 1 in the sixth. Oh, that's interesting. They throw out the fifth. And the harmony of the world becomes complete every 364th state of it. For the signs, the seasons, the years, and the days, Uriel showed me the angel whom the Lord of glory appointed over all the luminaries of heaven, in heaven, and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth, become conductors of the days and nights, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit with all the chariots of heaven. Thus Uriel showed me 12 gates open for the circuit of the chariots of the sun in heaven, from which the rays of the sun shoot forth. From these proceed heat over the earth when they are opened in their stated seasons. They are for the winds and the spirit of the dew, when in their seasons they are opened in heaven at its extremities. 12 gates I beheld in heaven at the extremities of the earth, through which the sun, moon, and stars, and all the works of heaven proceed at their rising and setting. Many windows also are open on the right and on the left. One window at a certain season grows extremely hot. So also are there gates from which the stars go forth as they are commanded, and in which they set according to their number. I saw likewise the chariots of heaven running in the world above to those gates in which the stars turn, which never set. One of these is greater than all, which goes around the whole world.
Okay. I'll read it and then we'll comment on it. But this particular chapter is about the Zodiac. and the 12 constellations. And I'll explain also why it mentions the first, the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth gate. The first, the third, the fourth, and the sixth gate. It's because that's where the equinoxes and solstices occur. But all right, let me read this. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary days, being inseparable from their office according to the reckoning of the year. And these render service on the 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them, men go wrong therein, for those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heaven, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal. And the exactness of the year is accomplished through its separate 364 stations. For the signs and the times and the years and the days, the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory hath set forever over all the luminaries of the heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven, and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the ministering creatures which make their revolution in all the chariots of the heaven. In like manner, 12 doors Uriel showed me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in the heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth, and from them is warmth diffused over the earth when they are opened at their appointed season, and for the winds and the spirits of the dew when they are opened, standing open in the heavens at the ends, as for the 12 portals in the heaven at the ends of the earth, out of which go forth the sun, the moon, and stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and in the west. There are many windows open to the left and to the right of them, and one window at its appointed season produces warmth corresponding as these do to those doors from which the stars come forth according as he has commanded them, and wherein they set corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set, and one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course through the entire world. All right, I'll explain some of this.
Did you ever see the movie Gods of Egypt?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and how they depict the Earth as being a plane. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also, Enoch's not the only text to describe the sun with a chariot and being pulled. And I thought, stylistically, visually, they did a really good job of showing that. I think that was a Ridley Scott movie, I think. But the Sumerians had a similar concept. In fact, Brian Godawa, he's written a lot of books, fictional novels taking place in the pre-flood genre, and he did one. I think it was about Gilgamesh, depicting a lot of these things. And that's what freaked me out, because I'm like, is he a flat earther? So I called him up. I called him up. And he's like, no. I was just trying to be faithful to what they believe. I said, but okay, wait a minute. If you're being faithful to what you know and very well document how, because he's got extensive footnotes and stuff to justify his fiction. He gives you. In fact, he's got a whole book that's basically, he took his footnotes and turned it into a nonfiction book. And I'm like, so you make an amazing scholarly case for what the ancients believed, and not just the generic ancients of multiple cultures, but what you would identify as the Holy Spirit inspired authors of the Hebrew text as well.
Yeah.
And,
but he's
in the Heiser camp.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
we know better than them. They were just primitives.
Yeah. So, there's that passage and I can't think of it off the top of my head. Maybe just look it up in Revelation, where it talks about the
Uh-huh.
angel standing in the sun.
Uh-huh.
Standing in the sun. Revelation 19:17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all of the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. So, what, John is telling us, and it's not John, because if you read the beginning of Revelation, it says this is the revelation of Jesus Christ. So
Right.
this is Yeshua here,
Yes.
angel standing in the sun. So, at some point we got to kind of like wrestle with the verbiage here. Like, what is happening here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, again, because we were talking about how the luminaries and even the stars, they are representative of angels.
Yeah.
And in the second book of Enoch, it describes actually that the sun is the light of 1,000 angels. And so, there could be multiple angels that host and move and help keep the brightness of the sun. But with regard to this particular chapter, again, it has to do, the leaders of the thousands are the stars that are predominant within the constellations. And it's talking about the 12 houses of the constellations. And as far as those days that are not counted with the 4 that are the intercalary days, those are the solstices and the equinoxes. And the mention of them as occurring, one in the first portal, one in the fourth portal, one in the third, and one in the sixth. This is actually where the gates of heaven are, as I told you that they were laid out. That the vernal equinox occurs in the third portal. When the sun crosses the third portal and reaches the equator, that's the vernal equinox. And then when it reaches the sixth portal, which is where the Tropic of Cancer is, it reaches for summer solstice, and then reversing course will descend back down through the sixth portal until it goes through the fifth. And then when it reaches the fourth portal, as it says here in the second portion, one is in the fourth portal, that is where the autumnal equinox occurs. And when the sun crosses the fourth portal, it reaches again the equator. And so that's when the autumnal equinox happens. Then it descends down through the third gate, the second gate, and then reaching the first gate, which is the first one that it mentions here, one in the first portal. That is where the Tropic of Capricorn is, and that's where the winter solstice occurs. And so the leaders of the heads of the thousands and these particular 4 days that are being spoken about, that are not included in the 360-day solar year, these are, again, these solstices and the equinoxes. And that's why, because it's these days that set the timing of the seasons, that when we reach the vernal equinox, that begins spring. When you reach the summer solstice, that's the beginning of summer. When you reach that autumnal equinox, that's the beginning of fall. When you reach the winter solstice, that's the beginning of winter. And, the 91 days that comprise each one of these seasons. And so that's what it's speaking about here. And then when it talks about how the heat and the dew and all of that is produced according to the revolutions, this is the sun not only moving through the constellations of the zodiac, but we know that in its transit back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, that especially for those that are living in northern latitudes, that when it reaches the vernal equinox, that begins spring. and summer for us, and the heat is increased. And we know that, we have the spring rains, and then also during the fall there is rains as well. And then when the sun crosses the equator for the autumnal equinox and then moves into southern latitudes, that begins our fall and our winter season, and where things, we have the harvest, and then things go dormant for 3 months out of the year. And then when it reaches for the winter solstice, reverses course and then reaches the equator again, that is the vernal equinox and the beginning of spring. And so Enoch is describing this motion and this pattern. We'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
We are going through the Book of Enoch, currently reading through chapter 75 in the R.H. Charles translation and 74 in the Richard Lawrence. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover in this particular chapter, brother?
But before that, I had a little glitch with my OBS software that caused me to momentarily lose the stream during your last segment. For those that are watching on YouTube, everybody on the radio obviously heard it, but in the YouTube chat, they're wondering if you could just do a brief recap on some of the last few things you touched on before the break.
Yeah, sure. Okay, and so what I was talking about with the portals is that the movement of the sun, as Enoch describes it, where the first chapter 72 in the R.H. Charles, and I think it's 71 in the Richard Lawrence, it describes the motions of the sun through the six gates of heaven. Well, we talked about that in great detail within that chapter, and I spoke about how Enoch begins his description of that motion with the sun located on the equator right after it has crossed through the third gate. And this is where the vernal equinox occurs. And that begins the season of spring. And that actually happens, as I said, right above the third portal. Because in this particular text, it makes mention of the leaders of the heads of the thousands, and then the 4 intercalary days being inseparable from the office according to the reckoning of the year. And then it says that these 4 days occur, one in the first portal, one in the third portal, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal. So the one that occurs in the third portal, as I said, when the sun crosses the third gate, the third portal, it reaches the equator for the vernal equinox. And that's this particular one. Then it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer, which is the sixth gate. It will cross through the fourth, which is directly above the equator, the fourth, fifth, and sixth gate. And then reaching the sixth gate, it will reverse course. And so that's why it says that one in the sixth portal, this is where the summer solstice happens. And then descending back down through the sixth, the fifth, and the fourth gate, it will reach, and that's why it says here, one in the fourth portal, it will reach autumnal equinox at the equator. And then it will descend down through the third, the second, and the first gate and reach, and that's why it says here, one in the first portal, because that's where the winter solstice occurs. And so these particular days, these 4 days, are the solstices and the equinoxes according to the motion of the sun through back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. And so, again, Enoch describes the beginning of that with the vernal equinox, because that's when God's calendar starts, with the month of Abib, or the month of Nisan, which is aligned with the vernal equinox in the beginning of spring. And so, and then it talks about how the heat and also the dews are aligned with this particular motion, because we know that the spring rains occur in March and April when the sun crosses the equator and it reaching the northern latitudes. That begins spring for us. And the reason we start to have more rains is because now the sun is located above the topography in these northern latitudes, and it's actually causing the evaporation of the water from the lakes and the streams and the rivers and the oceans. And that evaporation is rising into the air, and then when it condensates and creates storm clouds, then it creates the rain. And so the cycle of the rains and also the dry time, because in the summer, when the sun is located and remains above us for long periods of time, that's what creates our summer heat. And and so the rains and the heat and also the winds are all patterned after the movement and the motions of the sun, and they follow the sun as it moves in rotation around Polaris and as it creates night and day in the different portions of the plane of the earth. And then, once it reaches the equator for the autumnal equinox, it will cross into southern latitudes and cause that same cycle for those that live in the outer circle of the plane of the earth. And that begins their spring and their summer, and that begins our fall and our winter, because the sun is moving away from us. It's not located over our topography anymore. And that's also why the winds the Arctic, the polar breezes and the Arctic weather reaches down so far into the southern climates, because it's following the sun. And
Of hurricanes. It is true that hurricanes
but yeah, hurricanes, tornadoes, all of the phenomena of the storm
one way
events
in the so-called northern
occur because of that as well.
Did you hear something interrupting you?
Yeah, I just heard something about the hurricanes and something from a video.
Oh, I apologize.
It's all good. It's all the same thing.
I was trying to mute it on my end so I could preview it before I put it up. Then I realized, it's going out.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Well, to go along with what you were able to hear it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that would mean then everybody else should be able to hear it, theoretically.
Yeah, I think so.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you wanted to continue your thought.
Oh, no. I think I covered it.
Okay. So. There's a video that I did December 11th, 2017, when I was debunking the top 10 reasons why we supposedly know the Earth's a globe. And number 8 and 2, I think it was 2 of the 10 were the harder ones for me when I was first getting into this. Like I said earlier, it's like 8 out of 10 were like, really? This is like, you could travel east and go all the way around and come back where you started. Proof the Earth's a globe. Well, yeah, that works on a record player too. It's like, really? This is an argument, But the Coriolis effect and the lunar eclipse were the two that took a little more thinking to debunk. And when I was looking into that, I was trying to figure out, why is it, because it is true that storms, generally speaking, but not always, in the northern so-called hemisphere versus the southern, spin in different directions. And that's supposedly one of the Coriolis proofs for the Earth being a globe. And so in my effort to try to figure out, okay, what's going on here, this is what I put together in that regard. All right, I suggest you watch the rest of that video. Mm-hmm. It's really good, 200 proofs. And as I bring this video to a close, I want to address one more thing. That is the directional rotation of hurricanes. It is true that hurricanes rotate one way in the so-called northern hemisphere and another way in the so-called southern hemisphere. But we've just established that the Earth is not rotating. So whatever is going on, it has nothing to do with the Earth's rotation. And I'm just going to put this forward for some consideration. I saw a video that Carly Sunshine put out where this woman just took like a plate and moved it across a pool, and it created these vortexes that were spinning in opposite directions and went all the way across the pool. So could it be that there is an ether that Tesla and many others believed in for a long time, until Einstein came along and came up with a bunch of math problems to nullify the ether? That if there is some sort of medium through which the sun and moon are going, then maybe as these heavenly luminaries go through this ether, perhaps it creates some sort of current which makes the winds flow in very specific ways on either side of the path of the sun and moon. So maybe it's just the movement of these heavenly bodies going through the ether that are creating vortexes that just so happen to spin one way if you're on the inside of the circle, and one way if you're on the outside. Either way, whatever's going on is affected by the equator. And maybe this is an easier way to visualize it. You see the sun moving along its happy path here, woohoo, and it's creating in its wake opposite rotating vortexes as it goes. You know, in the northern hemisphere, it's rotating counterclockwise, and the southern clockwise. And interestingly enough, I found this animation done by a YouTube channel called Tech Insider, and it says that it turns out tropical storms don't come to within 5 degrees latitude of the equator. Wonder why? And it says they will likely never cross it either. And that's because of the winds pushing the storms away from the equator. Well, I mean, if that's the path of a localized sun and moon going around the circle of the earth, it just kind of makes sense that they're not going to get in the path of it. They're going to only be affected by, if you will, the wake that's left behind through the ether. Anyway, I could be totally off on that, and that's fine. For me, the whole thing is resolved by the fact that the Earth is not rotating. But as it pertains to what I just showed you, I would suggest you spend some time on the Thunderbolts Project YouTube channel. Now, these guys are not flat earthers, but they are making a really compelling case for the electromagnetic plasma universe thesis. And I've got a lot of really interesting things there regarding the sun and moon and the planets and stuff like that, and how potentially what the real nature of these things may be. And along similar lines to electromagnetism, as it pertains to the movement of weather patterns, I would suggest you watch these videos here by Richard Hopkins from the YouTube channel Mr. Thrive and Survive. He has some interesting insights, and as I understand it, he comes from actually having a meteorological background. I was going to put those videos here, but just for the sake of time, I'll say, go ahead and... hang on a second. Sounds like I'm looking in the chat room. People couldn't hear it.
Oh, really? I heard it perfectly.
Everybody's saying the volume's really low. I wonder if because it was coming through my monitor speakers, so maybe they were just hearing it through my headset mic instead of my actual system audio. I apologize for that. Anyway, you guys can go check it out for yourself. Go to my YouTube channel, debunking number 8 of the top 10 reasons why we allegedly know the Earth is round, as in a globe. But I bring that up because I was thinking about what you were saying, and how the sun's going through what Enoch calls these portals,
right?
And that when it goes through, was it the 4th gate or the 6th gate when it gets hot?
Right. Yeah, that's the 4th gate, because it crosses the 3rd, reaches the equator, which is between the 3rd and the 4th. But yes. That creates the vernal equinox. It crosses the 3rd gate, and that's the vernal equinox, and then it moves through the 4th, 5th, and 6th over the course of summer until it reaches the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice.
Yeah, so chemtrail activity aside, because they're certainly, and HARP and all that, they're certainly manipulating weather patterns.
Absolutely.
Screwing a lot of those things up. But, what you were describing helps to make sense. It's like, okay, I mean, if we consider the idea of the ether and it being, some sort of plasma or liquid of some sort, whatever, and the sun, moon, and heavenly luminaries traveling through this thing, leaving wakes behind.
Right.
And as they're moving, they're pushing air.
Yes.
And the air, just like a boat going through the water, leaves that wake, behind it. Right. They're leaving an air wake, if you will. Because, right now we've had some killer storms. Like I told you about that conference call that I was on with Justin Best and Adam Fink, and like during that, all of a sudden this massive storm just came through. Like I'm looking out my window, like trees are bending. I'm like, oh boy, I gotta go rescue my fledgling plants out in the back.
Right.
like, I mean, this is the time of the year, right? I mean,
it is, yes.
Those air currents getting pushed around and these storms happening and, hurricane seasons and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It helps to make sense, in that regard. So I can totally visualize and see justification for the things that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, I highlighted in the Charles translation, verse 3, and all the ministering creatures which make their revolution in all the chariots of the heaven. And that's where I'm scratching my head going, what? What is that? Did you give any thought to that when you were going through your thesis?
Mm-hmm. I think the creatures are ascribing the different angels that are also over the different elements, as well as the dew, the rains, even the winds, that there are angels assigned to all of them. And you have the cherubim, the ophanim, and the seraphim angels, and I do believe that they are regarded as creatures. And so that this could be what it's speaking about with regard to the hosts of heaven that are in charge of those particular aspects, because even the hoary frost, the snow, we see, in different earlier portions of the Book of Enoch, that it describes these celestial hosts as being over those particular elements and those particular occurrences and happenings, and they are regulated. They're patterned. We see that in different parts of the world, you have a rainy season and a dry season, and then you have the winter where everything is dormant. And so those kind of things, and often, like here in Georgia, we have 4 seasons, so we really feel the effects of the spring, summer, fall, and winter. But a lot of places only have the 3 predominant seasons, but it's all dependent upon, I believe, the topography and also how far you are away and near both the equator and the outer circle or the northern pole, that the differences in altitude and latitude and also that the storms, as the sun moves in circle and also back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, it creates the lower and higher pressure zones as well, and that regulates storms and patterns. And then you have the ongoing evaporation, condensation, and all that playing out. And so it's like a soup out there of dew and morning mist and rains and all that. And then you have them putting up barium and strontium and aluminum and all that into the chemtrails, and so that kind of skews things as well.
Yeah, messing it all up. This passage talks about Uriel sort of being the chief angel manager in charge of all of this. Mm-hmm. But it seems like I read somewhere else that I think it's Raguel.
Yes.
He's basically in charge of punishing the angels,
mm-hmm.
the luminary sentient beings that if they don't do what their prescribed thing is.
Right. Come forth at their appointed time.
I mean, it's interesting. With anything like this, you kind of struggle with, like, okay, what is literal, physical? What is mm-hmm. allegorical, metaphorical? Like the portals.
Yes.
I think you make a really good case for them being simply, what is a portal? It's an entranceway or something through which something enters and exits.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a physical structure in a structure.
Right.
It could just be, when it goes from Capricorn through the equator to Cancer and vice versa.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense to me. But yet it also talks about corresponding doors and windows in verse 7, which, we have the windows of heaven opened for the flood, and Enoch tells you later that those are physical structures that opened through which the heavenly waters from above came down.
Right.
So what do you make of those? I mean, I get the portals being regions through which they're passing, but it also says there are many windows open to the left and right of them.
I do absolutely believe that there are, just like windows that can be opened by God, and that things can be allowed to come through, and especially if he wants to allow the waters from above to enter into this particular world, that is one of the ways that he does it. I also think that things like this wormwood, this destroyer that is spoken about in the Colburn Bible, that there's a portion of the text that talks about the early destruction where it was destroyed and recreated. It says that this destroyer, this sky monster, was allowed to come in through the windows of heaven into this time-space dimensionality. And so I think that God allows celestial objects that he wants to use for judgment against the earth, like the wormwood of Revelation at the end of days, that those kind of things, are also allowed to come in through the windows of heaven. And so, whether it's a rift in space that God allows to happen and that things come through, I don't know, opening wormhole, who knows? But yeah, I do think it is something that literally open and closes and allows entrance and exit into this world, into this space.
Yeah, there have been a number of movies and television shows that have essentially depicted that, like the Avengers movies.
Right.
Most recently, the Picard TV series. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I honestly didn't particularly care for it, but
no.
But at the end of it basically, well, not basically, it does show that. And actually, something similar also in Star Trek Discovery, which I didn't like either. But it seems like this theme is coming up more and more in pop culture, of something opening and then destroyers coming in.
Right.
Through it. And it's like, well, you're not the originators of this idea, apparently, because we see this, at least something that could be perceived as that here in the Book of Enoch. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree. And, when we get to that portion, chapter 88, where it speaks about the lofty roof and how it was filled like a bathtub, I mean.
Yeah, that was Enoch's a slam dunk for the flat earthers. Like, that was, when I read that, I'm like, man, this is so point blank. I don't know how much clearer it could possibly be.
Right.
So, verse 9, it says in verse 8, I saw chariots in the heaven running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course through the entire world. What is that?
I think that's the sun. I think that the sun is the largest
that would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you could tie that, if that's the case, you could tie that directly to Psalm 119.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Or not 119, Psalm 19.
Psalm 19, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. All right. What do we got? About a minute before break, so we have time to go into the next chapter.
Yeah, just a minute out. And so, yeah, I'll just comment with regard to the, again, because Enoch does describe, and as do other texts like the Chronicles of Jeremiah, and I was just reading in the Legends of the Jews that on the fourth day it describes the sun as being one of the luminaries, the seven, which are the predominant, and that's the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. Those are what are called the seven planets of the universe. And so the sun, with all of these others, are moving in circle around Polaris, and not that all of these so-called planets are moving in circle around the sun. That is something that has been made up, in which the world has bought into, but it's not that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
Yep. All right, we got 20 minutes. 20 seconds before a break, but we'll be right back for final segment, everyone. It is crazy how this show goes by so fast. Yeah. But I know everybody's been enjoying it, and so a lot of good feedback. Yeah. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together. Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity, but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/Sacred Word Publishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back everybody for final segment. I did post into the chat rooms of both of our shows this short 15-minute segment. The name of the video is Zen Garcia plots the course of the sun over the flat earth as cited by Enoch. And it will show you, just like with what Rob had brought up on Stellarium, how the sun is speeding up and slowing down literally each day as it's shortening or lengthening its course, depending on whether it's moving towards the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn. That day and night also, the lengths of each are being adjusted. And so the sun, and this is one of the arguments against, as far as the flat earth and the azimuthal equidistant projection map, is that the heliocentrists don't believe that the sun can speed up and slow down, but that's exactly what it does. And then we see in the as far as the analemma, which people can take pictures of the sun as it's doing its thing, and it creates this figure 8. That's exactly what it shows to us, that the circle for summer and fall are smaller, and then the larger outer circle when for us, which is fall and winter, because it's the sun's crossed the equator and moved into southern latitudes, it's a very much larger circle. And so it shows that correspondingly that indeed the sun is moving in slower and tighter rotation for the spring and the fall when it is, spring and summer when it is above the equator, and then moving faster and quicker and larger circles in rotation when it's doing its thing in the fall and the winter. And we did talk about this. It's Zen Garcia plots the course of the sun over the flat earth as cited by Enoch.
Okay, that's a YouTube video?
Yeah.
Plots the course of the sun and earth. Oh, okay. That was when you were on my show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about, because in the Book of Ecclesiastes, in the Targum version of Ecclesiastes 1, verses 5 through 7, that Solomon describes this same motion, and so we were breaking it down and showing it according to that. Okay,
cool. Yeah, I put that up on the screen for people to check out, so they could just do Zen Garcia plots the course of the sun over the flat earth. And you added as cited by Enoch on your channel.
Yes.
It looks like some other people mirrored it as well. And actually, when you do that search in YouTube, the Project 314 comes up also. Mm-hmm. And I guess his interview that you did with Andy Hoy.
Yeah, and I just recently did another one. It was interesting. In this show, he brought up how that because it was the tabernacle was put up on the first day of Abib or Nisan, which is they tried to align it with the vernal equinox according to what he was describing, and so he said that it also creates a sundial, and that they would set these posts out in the courtyard, and that would also show like the Stonehenge, that where the sun was moving through these 6 gates of heaven back and forth, and that the tabernacle also served as a sundial, which I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, very cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, shall we go to the next chapter here? All right.
Absolutely.
So for me, that's 75 in the Lawrence. And at the extremities of the earth, I beheld 12 gates open for all the winds from which they proceed and blow over the earth. 3 of them are open in the front of heaven, 3 in the west, 3 on the right side of heaven, and 3 on the left. The first 3 are those which are towards the east, 3 are towards the north, 3 behind those which are upon the left towards the south, and 3 on the west. From 4 of them proceed winds of blessing and of health, and from 8 proceed winds of punishment, when they are sent to destroy the earth and the heaven above it, all its inhabitants, and all which are in the waters or on dry land. The first of these winds proceeds from the gate termed the eastern, through the first gate on the east, which inclines southwards. From this goes forth destruction, drought, heat, and perdition. From the second gate and middle one proceeds equity. There issue from it rain, fruitfulness, health, and dew, and from the third gate northwards proceed cold and drought. After these proceed the south winds through 3 principal gates. Through their first gate, which inclines eastwards, proceeds a hot wind. But from the middle gate proceed grateful odor, dew, rain, health, and life. From the third gate, which is westwards, proceed dew, rain, blight, and destruction. After these are the winds to the north, which is called the sea. They proceed from 3 gates. The first gate is that which is on the east, inclining southwards. From this proceed dew, rain, blight, and destruction. From the middle direct gate proceed rain, dew, life, and health. And from the third gate, which is westwards, inclining towards the south, proceed mist, frost, snow, rain, dew, and blight. After these, in the fourth quarter, are the winds to the west. From the first gate, inclining northwards, proceed dew, rain, frost, cold, snow, and chill. From the middle gate proceed rain, health, and blessing. And from the last gate, which is southwards, proceed drought, destruction, scorching, and perdition. The account of the 12 gates of the 4 quarters of heaven is ended. All their laws, all their infliction of punishment, and the health produced by them have I explained to thee, my son Methuselah.
All right, excellent. All right, chapter 76, and then I'll post an image from my book to help people to understand what is being spoken about here.
Cool, you're going to do that through Skype share?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, cool.
All right. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 portals open to all the quarters of the heaven, from which the winds go forth and blow over the earth. 3 of them are open on the face, the east of the heavens, and 3 in the west, 3 on the right, the south of the heaven, and 3 on the left, the north. And the 3 first are those of the east, and 3 are the north, and 3 after those on the left, on the south, and 3 of the west. Through 4 of these come winds of blessing and prosperity, and from those 8 come hurtful winds. When they are sent, they bring destruction on all the earth and on the water upon it, and all who dwell thereon, and on everything which is in the water and on the land. And the first wind from those portals, called the east wind, comes forth through the first portal, which is in the east, inclining towards the south. From it come forth desolation, drought, heat, and destruction. And through the second portal in the middle comes what is fitting, and from it there come rain and fruitfulness and prosperity and dew. And through the third portal, which lies towards the north, come cold and drought. And after these come forth the south winds through 3 portals. Through the first portal of them, inclining to the east, comes forth the hot wind, and through the middle portal next to it there come forth fragrant smells, and dew, and rain, and prosperity, and health. And through the third portal lying to the west come forth dew, and locusts, and desolation. And after these the north winds from the 7th portal in the east come dew, and rain, locusts, and desolation. And from the middle portal come in a direct direction health, and rain, and dew, and prosperity. And through the third portal in the west come cloud, and hoarfrost, and snow, and rain, and dew, and locusts. And after these 4 are the west winds through the first portal, adjoining the north, come forth dew, and hoarfrost, and cold, and snow, and frost. And from the middle portal come forth dew, and rain, and prosperity, and blessing. And through the last portal, which adjoins the south, come forth drought, and desolation, and burning, and destruction. And the 12 portals of the 4 quarters of the heaven are therewith completed, and all their laws, and all the plagues, and all their benefactions have I shown to thee, my son Methuselah. All right, so let me share my screen.
So this is Enoch. Well, Uriel is showing this to Enoch. He's writing it down and explaining it to Methuselah.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah, Uriel had given it to Enoch first, and then, yeah, he passes it on to Methuselah, yes. All right. So you see this image?
Yeah, just stand by. I will get it up for everybody here. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so in my opinion, the only way that what is being described in this that can make sense is you have the four quarters. So you have the north, the west, the east, and the south. And that the world is divided into these four quarters, these four sections. And then it describes three winds with each one of the quarters. One is close to the north, which I believe is where you have the cold and frigid wind. And then you have one that is closer to the equator, which is the dew and the rains and the ones of blessing. Actually, the one near the equator would be the hot wind, the drier wind. And then you have the one that is lower than that, which would be the rains and the dews of blessing. And I think that according to where the sun is, because again, the winds and the rains and everything follow the sun as it moves back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, but that predominantly there are three in each quadrant of the world that produce the cold wind, the hot wind, and then the wind of rain, dew, and blessing. And that this is all, those windows open up and release those particular winds according to the movement of the sun as it transits back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, and where it is in relation as it circles around the North Pole. And if it's in southern latitudes, it's circling way out here. And so, but in my opinion, again, you have to just break it down as if Enoch is standing where Polaris is with the angel Uriel, looking down on the circle of the earth. He sees the sun and the moon and all the luminaries moving in circle around the North Pole, as we've been showing and describing it in, all of these motions, that it would be the same backdrop, that the earth would be the backdrop, and it would be in the orientation of the azimuthal equidistant projection map, as we see on the flag of the United Nations. And that once you apply those motions, those quadrants, and those winds to a map such as this, then it makes, in my opinion, a lot more sense.
So, yeah, I would agree. You've got looks like the map is rotated almost 180 degrees maybe, because the standard AE map has Australia up top here, so everything's kind of rotated, it looks like. Because I would look at like your quadrants like you have it here. It seems to me it would make more sense if Africa is down here, where you have south. And
I didn't really know how to start with that. Yeah,
I think you've got it rotated about
upside down,
about 180 degrees. I think this has got a.
See, I have this other one.
There you go. That's the one. Yeah. Yeah, that one makes more sense to me, because I did a similar thing when I was trying to figure out, okay, people who don't want to buy into what we call biblical cosmology and who believe the spherical model, they'll tell you that the four corners are the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. Uh-huh. But on their model, that doesn't make sense. There is no a geographic location upon which an angel can stand called east.
Right, right. Yeah.
I mean, if you go east, you're just going to keep going east. You're never going to arrive.
It's a big circle, right?
Yeah, you'll never arrive at a location that an angel can be standing on. So,
yes.
the only way that makes sense to me for I think they're partially correct in that the four corners are the geographical cardinal points.
Cardinal points, yes.
That only works, frankly, in my mind anyway, in this model with a circle inscribed into a square.
Exactly, yes.
With the north, south, east, west being judged from the vantage point of Israel.
Right, right.
So in this orientation that you have on the screen now, that would be correct because you got Israel down here, north going this way, east would be anything going that way, west that way, and south, that way. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
So,
and the reason, just so you know, the reason I have these two different maps is because in the Book of Enoch, it has an alignment and an orientation to paradise. And I was taking, I don't remember exactly what I was taking paradise from, like the Middle East, and aligning the movements to that. And then the other one is to Jerusalem. And so this one is the Jerusalem alignment, but
that one makes sense to me. That's the same alignment that I came to. In my presentation. Let's see if I can pull that up while you have anything more you might want to say on that.
Yeah, so again, in my opinion, the entire Book of Enoch, all chapters of the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and his descriptions of the motions of the luminaries, for instance, the sun and the moon, he says that they move from east to west and then back from the north to the east, which is a circle. And it makes sense that if the sun rises in the morning every day, that it is circling, and that when it reaches the vanishing point in the west, that is morning for those that live on the northern part of the circle of the earth. And they see the sun entering into their perspective, and then it lights up their field of illumination over the course of the day, crosses their southern skies, and then reaches in their west, which is our east, their sunset, and that becomes sunrise for us. And so, again, it only makes sense, in my opinion, looking that Enoch is describing all of these motions while looking down from the vantage point of what would be above the Mount of the Congregation, Polaris, in the sides of the north, where the heavenly throne and the temple and God's, throne is situated. And, what better vantage point for God to establish the heavenly temple than right there in the circle, in the middle, to look upon everything. And then if this is also the place that Christ and also New Jerusalem will descend down from, every eye shall see, because everybody's looking up. I agree. On the screen, I have from my Test and Globe presentation that I did in Canada. This is when I was first trying to reconcile these things and figure it out in my mind. This is the usual AE map orientation that's on the screen right here. And so I drew just sort of a compass there with 4 arrows pointing in different directions. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to rotate this so that it's from the vantage point of Israel. So Israel being right on the north-south line right here, right underneath it. And then I orientated the square so that the corners are there. So effectively, this is what I came up with. So you've got the so-called circle of the earth orientation like this with Israel on the north-south line. So the vantage point from Israel, that would be north, east, etc. And you look at the different scriptures where it says, and I justify that from Ezekiel 5:5, thus says the Lord God, this is Jerusalem. I have set her in the center of the nations with countries all around her. Oh, and, nice. Yeah, perfect.
So if you sort of put a bullseye right there, Israel's right underneath the crosshair of the black line, the north-south black line, and the yellow. And you look at the landmass that's below that line, above that line, and to the east and west of that line, it's pretty much, that's right.
Mhm.
Jerusalem is at the center of the land mass of the earth.
Yes.
And then, you got the other, he's going to gather to disperse in the four corners of the earth, Isaiah 11:12. And this was the big one that forced me into having to look at this, because it's Revelation 7:1 says, and I saw, after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth. So where Enoch's talking about these winds, right? You got to realize, people, that Enoch is or the canonized scriptures, I should say, are in perfect alignment with what Enoch's telling you.
Right. Exactly.
And it says that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And of course, we also have Matthew 24:31, where Yeshua says, "And he shall send his angels with a great sound of the trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." Now, as we say in Texas, bless your heart, right? That when we say bless your heart, we're not, we're actually saying, yeah, you're an idiot. But there are some people out there that were trying to tell me at that time, no, that just proves the space program.
Right.
Jesus is going to pull back the astronauts, on the way to Mars or wherever. And I'm like, yeah, bless your heart. No, it says one end of heaven. That's because Amos tells you the heaven, the firmament that is called heaven, is attached to the earth. Now where it is attached, at some point beyond the coastline of Antarctica, that's anybody's guess. I speculate 800 to 1200 would be the minimum. Of course, you see the other ancient maps that depict land beyond that.
Outside that, yeah.
So, if that's the case, if there's land beyond this ring on the outer side, out here somewhere, then the firmament just connects further out.
Yes.
But it's still connected one way or another. And he's gathering, from one end of heaven, because heaven's attached to the earth.
Yes.
The four corners. So, to me, when I'm looking at the text, this is the only thing that makes sense. It certainly can't work in any way with the spinning heliocentric globular Earth model.
I fully agree. And I think that, when people read this manuscript and really consider what is being described, you can only make sense of it by applying the Earth as the backdrop for the motions, and that the luminaries are described as moving in circle above the face of the earth and in the heavens. The tabernacles of the earth. And there's no other way to make sense of it.
Yeah, and I think that Andy Hoy's model is like the perfect. And this is what frustrates me about somebody like Brad Scott, who again I love. I think he's a great guy, got some amazing teachings. Not on the same page with him regarding the Nephilim, and not on the same page with cosmology, because he's sort of like the what's the other guy, Ray or Giglio or something like that. You I'm talking about, the guy who likes to show the magnitude of the universe and relate that to the magnificence of God. I can't think of it.
No, anyway, I'm not sure.
There's the evangelists out there. And look, to be fair, I was on the same page, just a few years ago.
Yeah, right.
But like Brad, like he's very knowledgeable in the Hebrew and the Paleo Hebrew and the character meanings of the letters in Hebrew, and how it's a pictographic language and meant for agricultural type people to understand. Very simple. It's just picture language. And like the first letter in the Bible is the letter Beit, Bereshit, in the beginning, and the letter Beit represents a house. And so like Brad will make a point of talking about how this was God's plan right from the beginning. His plan was to build a house that he could fellowship with his people in. And I'm over in the corner raising my hand like, yeah, Brad, like it's a tent.
Exactly, right.
Nothing about the universe that you believe in.
Ever expanding. Yeah.
No, nothing fits
Infinite.
the description you are so eloquently describing.
Right. Exactly.
I'm like, just it's like you love these people and they got great teachings, but like, dude, like listen to yourself.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Because David tells you, like, again, we'll go back to Psalm 19. Psalm 19 is in total agreement
Right.
with what we are discussing here.
Right.
So
exactly.
even if you want to throw out Enoch, out, you've at least got David saying essentially the same thing. You got Amos saying the same, Isaiah saying the same thing.
Right.
I would go so far as to say is Jesus Christ, Yeshua, saying the same thing in his revelation to John.
And Solomon,
and Solomon, and Job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Can you make firm the skies above? Right.
Right. Molten looking glass. Yes.
Molten looking glass. Well, we're about the end right now. Looks like
we are.
Well, we got through
All
what,
right,
2
brother.
chapters?
Yeah. Well, these are elaborate though, and people can now make sense of them in a way that is understandable at least.
Hope so.
All right, man. Be blessed. God bless everyone. All right. Good night, all. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.